at a time when Democrats are struggling to find a strategy forward during President Trump's second term. With me now is former Congresswoman Katie Porter, who is now a candidate for California governor. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning. All right. Here's the bad news. Things not looking good for President Trump's initial policies, his DOGE layoffs, his tariffs, the way he handled Ukraine so far, the way he's just not doing enough about the economy. All of that is highly unpopular in polling. And yet, Democrats somehow have no cohesive message that resonates, no sense of togetherness, and no strong leadership. How is that possible?
Democratic Party, but I can tell you what I'm doing, which is stepping up in this moment to talk first and foremost about the need to bring down the cost of living. And in California, the biggest issue is the cost of housing, something we haven't seen Democrats or Republicans take much action on in recent administrations. And so really being able to talk about how the cost of living is the biggest problem, and it is being made worse by Donald Trump. So when people say, do you have to stand up to Trump and deal with Trump and what he's doing, or do you have to bring down the cost of living? The answer is they are now the same thing, because these tariffs and other policies are only going to push the economy into a worse place and hit families harder.
Do you blame Gavin Newsom for the cost of living crisis and the homelessness crisis in California?
Housing has been a challenge for California for decades. And this has always been a little bit of a boom bust kind of housing economy. We do need to make structural changes, including reducing, reforming how our environmental laws, our bedrock environmental law called the CEQA, is applied to housing. We need to make it cheaper to build. That means innovating around the kinds of building materials we use, thinking about how to build things in ways that are more fireproof, for example. The next governor is going to have to head on tackle the crisis that we're facing with home insurance. And I'm ready to do that.
All right. I do want to ask you about this latest CNN polling because you were a congresswoman and you are still a Democrat, and I know you're running for California governor now. But we're seeing these polls, and it's the lowest approval rating for Democrats that we have seen in modern history. Just 29% among the American public overall think that the Democrats are doing well. And this was before Chuck Schumer angered Democrats farther by helping pass the Republican bill to keep the government open. Do you think that Democrats as a whole need a change in leadership?
Well, look, I'm running in part because we're going to have a change in leadership in California. In Congress, I pushed several times to try to change up some of our rules to make sure that we were rotating leaders in and out, that we were giving those who were new to Congress a voice. I do think that there is a sort of natural evolutionary process here of electing different leaders because the world has changed, right? So I went to college in a world where student loans were a 10-year problem after you graduated. There are now lots of people for whom student loans are a lifetime problem after they graduate. So I do think that because the world has changed, we need people who have experiences living in the world where our voters are struggling. So childcare now costs more than college tuition in half of all states. If you understand that, if you've tried to pay that bill like I have, then I think you prioritize, for example, childcare policy differently. I've said for a long time that the Democrats need stronger messengers on the economy. And I think what we've seen sometimes is the Democratic Party be drawn toward messengers about Trump, people who are anti-Trump. You can and you must be both, because as I said, Trump's economic policy is a cost of living problem in and of itself. But that's how we should be talking about Trump. We should be talking about how is Trump hurting you? How is Trump going to make it impossible for your small business to thrive? How is Trump going to make your retirement more difficult?
All right. You famously used a whiteboard to explain complex ideas in very simple ways, and it did catch on with many voters. If you had your whiteboard today with you, how would you fix the Democratic Party?
Oh, I think I would remind them. I would put a number one up, a great big number one. That's the only thing I would write on the board. And then I would remind people that in every single election cycle in my lifetime, and I am 51 years old, the number one issue is the economy. So we have got to focus on that. and we have to tie things back to the economy. So even Trump's chaotic kind of social policies, his attacks on DEI, things like that, those all create economic upheaval. People lose their jobs. They have to spend time doing non-productive work, like changing websites. It's all about the economy, and frankly, it always has been.
You cut out a little bit. You said if you wrote a number one on your board, there will be a single thing on the whiteboard that you used. And what would that number one say?
It would be the economy. So I would tell people and remind people that in every single election for multiple generations, the number one issue has been the economy. So we have to start looking at the lens of what Trump is doing through the economy. So even Trump's sort of so-called social issues like DEI, attacks on DEI policy, those are extremely economically unproductive.
Former Representative Katie Porter now throwing her hat in for California governor. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. John?
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the economy. Just moments ago, the markets opened on Wall Street. Stocks a little bit down for the day. Actually, the NASDAQ down more than 1% so far. Uncertainty over President Trump's policies, particularly tariffs, have sparked